Hello, it's Rich Rosen, founder and CEO of Fastcall, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about dialing with the keypad in Fastcall and also talk about dialing extensions. So inside of the Fastcall application, there is a keypad, and there is also a setting, which I'll show you in a few minutes, about when to reveal this and when not to. But I want to talk about sort of what happens when we're using the keypad versus dialing from directly from a record. So I'm looking at Salesforce record. I'm in Lightning. This looks like a contact, or maybe it's a lead actually. When I dial directly from a phone on a phone field, any phone field, any Salesforce record, we are creating a call record always, and we are most likely creating a Salesforce task. That is optional, but we are creating the lookup between the calls and the record that I've dialed. So in this case, it's a test record, but the lookup is always created because I'm dialing from the record. Uh, we have separate posts and videos on how this is managed for inbound calls, but for outbound calls, lookup is here. I'm on the record, I dial it, there's a lookup created. Now, if I come into the keypad, for example, and I dial 323 536 9006, and I make an outbound call, we're going to look in the lookup table for the related record, and we're going to look to make a match. So this is actually working kind of the same way. So there it is. It's kind of the same way that an inbound call is happening. So we're making this outbound call from the keypad, and the application saying, well, I don't know who you're calling, but let's look. Now in this case, you'll notice it actually created a lookup to a different record because that's what we have in the lookup table. I'm going to end this call. So you may not want that, right? Because if you're calling on this record and you dial from this record, the lookup will always be created on this record. Now, if I dial using the keypad, let's see, I'll just close out this call. If I dial using the keypad with a phone number that doesn't exist in Salesforce, then there's going to be no lookup relationships. What will end up happening is we will create calls, we will create a task, but there'll be no lookup between the calls and or the tasks and the record that I've dialed. And we'll say that we call that an orphan. You'll have records with no lookup, and you might not want that. And if you come back in tomorrow, next week, a couple months from now, and you dial the number again, you're not going to have a record of it because you're not going to have that lookup relationship between the record and your history of calls. Now we do have a couple of settings, which I'll show you in a second, to help manage this, but I want to talk also a little bit about the keypad since we are here. Within the keypad, we do have a couple of options. I could, well, let's go over here. I'm going to take a phone number here, and I can cut and paste, which is probably what a lot of our users do, is they're cutting and pasting phone numbers here. We don't love that. We don't love the idea of cutting and pasting into the dial pad, again, because you're not creating the lookup record that you should, but I wanted to show you that there is a text box here. Sometimes that text box is actually a little faint, but there's a text box here and you can dial from it. There's an SMS option too. When you are dialing a phone number, and if you have to dial extensions, matter of fact, I'm going to dial this number again. So if I'm dialing a phone number and I have to dial an extension, I can actually do that two ways. Since we're talking about the keypad, I'm going to answer this call. And I can dial here, and that will send the digits. I can also sort of click on I'm going to end this call. I can click here on the keypad and then use my number pad on my keyboard, which sometimes is a little bit more convenient. And you'll see that the numbers are going to show. So I can use my keyboard, or I can use the keys here. Usually the keyboard is the easier way to do it, but we will recognize both. If your cursor is in this text box, yeah, I guess we still do. But I think that you may have to have the cursor sort of here on the keypad in order to present those digits. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about that. So I'm just going to say contact test. So I want to talk to you. I mentioned a couple of our settings. Let's take a look at a couple of our settings. One setting that we have, since we did talk about extensions in the keypad, here under call handling outbounds, the first setting, the ability to dial extensions automatically with a delay. 3 seconds, could be two, it just gives you a small delay. That's really helpful. And let me show you and the other, I'm going to just show you since we're already here in the settings. Where is that? Is that restrictions? I have to remember where we have this. We have no, it's not restrictions. We have the ability to require the related record before. I'm not sure if that's going to be under require. Okay, I may have to, oh, here it is, called termination. So we do have, I found it. So we do have the option, require related record to close a task. Now this is a little bit of a hammer, honestly, but it basically does not allow the user to close a task if they're calling an unknown number. So if the user is dialing here in the dial pad, when the call ends, they're going to have to create a record. So if I cut and paste this phone number from a Google search, they're going to have to create a lead in order to finish this process. And sometimes that makes sense. I have it turned off in my org, but we do have this option where users are not able to close tasks without with an orphan without a related record. I like this setting. I don't remember exactly when we added it. It's relatively new, but can be effective. And then the extensions. But let's go back real fast to, let's just go back real fast to the extensions, which I mentioned. Doesn't matter which record it is, I'll go back to the same one. So the ability to automatically dial extensions, basically how you do that is, I put that in here, you just come in here and you say X, and I'm not sure that it really matters what you have. It could say extension, could say X, 223, and I save this. And then when I dial this number, we're going to wait the delay that we put in there, and we're going to play the extensions. So if it's, so I'm dialing another one of my phones, so we can actually hear that. Right? So waited a couple seconds and then played the tones automatically. That is also a way, if you are ever doing some troubleshooting, if you call a phone that you own and enter either the extensions either this way or in the keypad, and you hear them, you know the extensions, the tones are being passed. You know, obviously you're not going to recognize whether it's a 2, 3, or 4, but you should hear tones being sent. That's how these are called DTMF, dual tone frequency. I don't know, mono probably. I don't know what it is. Could Wikipedia that. DTMF are these tones. Super old school phone. Okay, so I wanted to talk about dial pad extensions, automatically dialing extensions, requiring a record. When we do require a record, and I'll use this to finish up, it's the same basic lookup to say there's a lookup for all these calls, right? So when we require a record, it kind of works the same way as this, where it says create new lead. It's going to say if we are requiring this, you have to create this lead, which could be last name, company. This is a lead in Salesforce. Salesforce requires the last name. This can be customized in Fastcall. You can capture as little as much as you want, but Salesforce requires last name and company when you're creating a lead via API, which is what we're doing here. So if you don't know, you're going to have to just put an X there, or and one of these, you can X out both of these honestly, but you should know something about who you're calling. But that's how that looks. Okay, hopefully this is helpful. Shoot us an email if you have any further questions. Otherwise, have a fantastic day.